This week we are talking about The Prince of Egypt. This movie is, well, we're choosing to launch off our December holiday spectacular month by talking about a movie whose central holiday does not take place in December, but rather in March? April? I think it's like Easter where it changes. Passover.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different calendar, so...
Yeah. Hops about in comparison to us.
But, I mean, I feel like it's a good topic for the, quote, holidays, because the three holidays that tend to run around this time of year are all encompassed by this figure that we're talking about, or who's the star of this film, Moses. He's sort of a big deal to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and so I don't think it's like totally out of the field of
We're going to the core of the things, the heart of the matter, back to down to the roots. What's all this hip happening nonsense about? It's about this guy.
And as I said earlier, this discussion might go to some weird places because it's kind of an odd movie. Like, it's certainly a good movie and was critically acclaimed at the time. This movie came out in 1998, the tail end of the Disney Renaissance, at which point it was pretty well established that Disney were on top and there weren't many other people who were able to get in on that pizza.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody did have a good film, God forbid it was running while a Disney film was running, because then they just wouldn't make any money.
And that's where Jeffrey Katzenberg came in.
Yeah, let's give some history of DreamWorks.
All right. So Jeffrey Katzenberg used to be the Disney chairman. But he left Disney for reasons. And he said that he always wanted to do an animated adaptation of the Ten Commandments. The famous film.
Charlton Heston, really long, has a weird love triangle for no reason. Metallica made a song about it.
Yeah.
Did they? What song was that?
Creeping Death.
Oh. Neat.
Katzenberg first suggested the idea while working for Disney. He suggested it to Michael Eisner, but it was refused because Disney's not going to touch religion with a 10-foot pole.
Well, not going to touch religion that...
Explicit religion.
Yeah, because, I mean... Well, they did Hercules, but nobody still cares about Zeus.
So the idea for the film was brought back at the formation of DreamWorks when Katzenberg's partners, Amblin Entertainment founder, Steven Spielberg, and music producer David Geffen were meeting in Spielberg's living room. As we learned from Animaniacs and Freakazoid producers, a lot of stuff happened in Spielberg's living room. Katzenberg recalls that Spielberg himself, looked at him at the meeting and said, "You ought to do the Ten Commandments." So that's what he decided to do with his brand spanking new animation studio. Take a really big risk and tell the story of Moses. Takes a lot of balls to do something like that, I think.
Yeah, to make a family movie. This is a movie that Disney would have never made and still wouldn't.
No.
Because Disney is not looking to offend anybody. They do a lot, but not by making movies about. They don't make movies about controversial subject matter or even delicate subject matter, which I feel is a better way to describe this. It's not really controversial.
Yeah,
it's
Moses
delicate.
isn't controversial. He's just super important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, but now that I think about it, Disney, they don't make subject matter that they consider to be delicate subject and controversial. But then, I don't know, Pocahontas, that whole thing, it's Native Americans would disagree that entire period of time was pretty controversial and delicate.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff like that.
I guess it's movies that aren't controversial to white people. I was going to go as long as I could without saying that.
We made it almost a half hour.
No, we really didn't.
If you count the news.
Well, DreamWorks, of course, was concerned about theological accuracy. So Katzenberg decided to directly call in biblical scholars, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim theologians, Arab American leaders, and they all came in to help the film be more accurate and faithful to the story. And then after previewing the film, all these leaders noted that the studio executives listened and responded to their ideas and praised the studio for reaching out for comment from outside sources. So they didn't just they handled it appropriately, I would say.
Yeah, they tried.
Yes. They talked to Egyptologists and all these different people.
Stayed away from the ancient aliens guys. If that was even a thing.
They actually had, they took trips. They took a 2-week travel across Egypt that, all the filmmakers did before they even started production. A lot like how Pixar would do later on the road when they started making their movies. They would go on trips before they started animating stuff to, actually know what the heck that they were animating and looking at.
Rad.
There are 1,192 scenes in this film, and 1,180 of them have special effects in them. And this was one of the things that really set this film apart at the time from Disney, was the integration of CGI and 2D animation, which nowadays looks a little chunky, but at the time was amazing. I mean, the wind blowing, the environmental effects, the lighting, the shadows.
I mean, you can I think they hold up.
Yeah, I do. And, some of the things that are supposed to look kind of like the basket.
I was going to say, the
really
basket
off.
was the only part where it was super noticeably off for me.
But I read that they did that on purpose. They wanted to draw attention to the depth of the basket because it is such a important part of the story. Drawing various inspirations, both character design and art direction work to set a definite distinction between the symmetrical, more angular look of the Egyptians versus the more organic, natural look of the Hebrews and their related environments. I was just trying to say that they were sort of conscious about the look of the characters, how they appeared, because we're dealing with not white people, I guess.
People who are both not white and frequently whitewashed.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly.
Good example. The 10 Commandments.
Or the fucking... I don't want to talk Exodus. I don't want to get into a deep discussion about that movie. I'm just mad about it.
Yeah, we don't even need to, because it's just so blatantly okay, yeah. Moving on.
Yeah, the Hebrews are depicted with curly mops of unruly dark hair. Many of them have large noses. They also have lighter skin compared to the Egyptians, while the Egyptians have rounder, smoother faces, high cheekbones. This was intentional. The Egyptians are composed of angular, symmetric, geometric lines, as opposed to the Hebrews' rounded, more natural and varied forms. A lot of this came from authentic Egyptian art, and how they depicted Semites as bearded and lighter skinned in contrast to the clean-shaven, darker Egyptians. I actually have a link to share with you guys so you can see the difference.
Visual aid on a podcast. Good for us.
Yeah.
Good, screw you, everyone else. Oh,
yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think going with the Egyptian art as a baseline for how these people looked is the safest thing they could have done, because there's a lot of sort of contentious archaeological and Egyptological research and findings about what did Egyptians look like, what did everybody actually look like, and we have a lot of ideas, and a lot of those ideas go against the whole 10 Commandments idea of what people looked like.
Yeah.
Which is namely to say that they looked like African people, which...
In Africa.
The idea that it's such a... Yeah. That's still a controversial thing or whatever, but yeah, I think that going by their own art that they made is a pretty safe road to take.
Yeah, and they did. They looked like their art came to life, their adornment, their hairstyles, the way they did their eye makeup and all that stuff. I thought was really, really well done, and the film looks gorgeous. The visual establishing shots.
Oh, the shot composition in this movie is fantastic.
Ridiculously good. Almost every single scene, probably every single scene, if you wanted to stare at shit for that long, is everything just looks so intentional and on purpose. Somebody said the shot has to look like this for these reasons.
Yeah, Katzenberg intended this to be his big epic film. It was his first film since working on The Lion King, and he sort of wanted to outdo that and show Disney, like, what he was capable of on his own.
He succeeded.
Which is a hell of a goal to go up
Yes.
against The Lion King in, 1990, whenever production started.
An epicness. And this film is, appropriately sized, for both the story itself, how it's depicted, and also like the larger context of the significance of the story. You had to go big.
I mean, the Egyptians themselves basically lived and died under the mantra of go big or go home.
So if you are not familiar with the story of Moses, that is fine.
Okay.
Not everybody descends from the Abrahamic religions.
Okay, let us break it down for you. Holy Moses met the Pharaoh. Yeah, he tried to set him straight. Looked him in the eye. Let my people go. Those are song lyrics. That's the joke.
I figured, I'm like, what is this song? Is this...
All you zombies.
All right. All right. I don't...
By the Hooters.
Still nothing. Not helping me at all.
The story, sort of simplified, is Moses was a Hebrew who was adopted by the Pharaoh, grew up as a prince of Egypt, exiled himself when he found out about his origins. Well, in this movie, he found out about it. The original story never really makes it clear whether he knew or didn't know or whatever. He just sort of left. God talks to him and is like, you will be my prophet. You go free my people from the Egyptians who have enslaved them all to build their temples and pyramids. So he goes back. There's plagues. God performs miracles through him. The Hebrew slaves are free, and he leads them all to the promised land, parts the river, 10 Commandments, etc., etc. Superman, kind of, if you want to go more pop culture with it, Superman is Moses with aliens. Like the whole going down a basket in a river thing. That's where that came from.
Yeah.
This story.
Moses.
So how do we want to continue approaching the film? I mean, it's hard to sort of talk about it in a vacuum, like just as a film in and of itself, considering like the greater story at large, but I think that's what we're going to try to do for the most part.
Yeah.
Because none of us are particularly religious, though I did do some research to sort of better inform myself. Yeah, that's a good thing to know. None of us are particularly religious, but we picked this film because we really enjoyed it despite that. I remember it being very impactful as a kid. The relationship between Moses and Ramesses was the thing that stuck out the most to me when I was a kid and now as an adult.
Yeah, upon, rewatching it this week, it's, I think, the film's strongest point in its favor.
Yeah, absolutely. But not, and tying in to their relationship with tying into like how the film treats Ramesses, just how it treats like all of the Egyptians really. Like yes, obviously they're the bad guys, they're the enslavers, but yet like most of them just sort of like they're not 100% bad people. They just are raised in this society that just like tells them it's okay, and they're like, oh, all right, and then nothing bad happens to them. So why the hell would they question the status quo that supports them?
Yeah, that's the thing this film does that I don't think really any other adaptation really went into, because the whole point of the story is to say these are God's chosen people. Yeah. They're better than everyone else. And they're obviously the good guys, and, it's the very eye for an eye. The film opens, and the story begins with Ramses the First killing all the firstborn children of the Hebrew slaves because he's afraid they're going to, overpopulate and, rebel and stuff. And then later, the angel of death kills all the firstborns of the Egyptian people, and it's just this very biblical eye for an eye thing, which this film really does handle in a way I don't really expect from a lot of religious fare, in that it's not black and white. It's very
and also for a family
difficult
movie to have that kind of moral ambiguity.
When that final plague came, I was just I was like, really? They just did that? Children died.
Yeah, I was stunned silent. Like
I
"Oh my
watched
God."
a child die. Like he was in.
Well, you watched it. Let's be fair. We didn't No, we did watch children actually drop dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that was
we didn't
on
see
screen.
the drop, but we heard the drop, and then like his arm flopped out of the doorway. And I was like, for real? Holy shit!
PG? Wowie!
That is one thing I am very surprised this was PG, because I know like spreading the blood on the doors is part of Passover. That's why it's called Passover. But like, there was a lot of blood.
Well, this actually reminds me of, like, in the golden age of Hollywood, if they wanted to do something really sleazy and exploitative, they would put it in ancient Bible-y times, because they could say, well, that's just how it was back then in religious times. So we have to be realistic on our movies, so let's have a bunch of tits and butts everywhere. So I think that maybe, to obviously a lesser extent, by couching it in a religious context, you can get away with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, the river of blood.
I don't think that in another context you could get away with doing that in a PG movie.
No.
Yeah, it was blood. Like, they animated it differently than the water. Like, they distinctively made it blood.
Yeah, that way that blood, like, kind of goes into stringy streams in water.
Yeah, because they showed it, like, when Hotep and Hoi tried to, like, do the same thing, and they just pretty much made Kool-Aid. It was like that. It looked different from the river.
And, there was, like, the violence and the suffering, I mean, with, like, the whipping and the abuse and stuff, but, it was...
That was, like more times than not, you heard whipping and then, like, saw scars. Real whipping...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Real whipping, there's blood.
There's lots of stuff.
That they couldn't get away with in PG. But, like, the effect was powerful enough.
Oh, I know, absolutely. Just seeing them, the effects of it, just watching them suffer, and, like, old people just drop. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it was true. Like, somebody had to build all that crap, and it definitely wasn't...
Aliens.
...the comfortable living people or aliens. It was, whoever they could get, and they're, like, made them build it or else. But at the same time, that it's not black and white was really effective
basically
to me, because...
to give the Egyptians any redeemable qualities in this story is just thin as you're tight roping on like on a single strand of human hair, and they pulled it off.
They really did, to the point where I didn't really know how to feel. At the end of it, I was like, I guess I'm happy the Jews are free. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy they're free, but I don't like
what the
any
film
of
is
this.
like. What the film is saying, that like you can get your freedom, but it's like that's not going to be it. There's a lot of in order to do like giant social mass upheaval rebellion like that, it's never pretty.
No.
Yeah, and I feel like, the movie absolutely addresses that, and they address it more than you would think they would, but they don't go all the way. Like,
oh, no.
The end of the movie...
It's almost subtextual, just because there's no giant, moral...
But, like, the end of the movie is very celebratory. By the end, they're like, well, we did it! I mean, obviously glossing over the fact that those poor bastards are stuck in the desert for 40 goddamn years.
Yeah, this movie only tells, like, the first part of Exodus. It stops after he comes down from the mountain with the commandments.
Yeah, and that's, like, shown in a montage.
Yeah. It's really about Moses and his relationship with the kingdom of Egypt and the kingdom of the Hebrews.
Yeah,
and that duality.
Well, as awkward as sort of like a weirdly tacked on, like, oh yeah, and then all this shit happened ending, as it kind of felt like. I do like that they made that conscious decision to really focus on just that one aspect of the story and tell that part of the story as best they could.
Yeah, because from what I read, that part of most of the movie is a very small part of Exodus.
Oh yeah,
like his birth, his adoption, his family stuff. Like that's like a couple pages. Like that's not the most important part of the scripture. This whole movie tries to take scripture and bring out the humanity of it.
Well, because scripture is like, it's not prose, so it's very much just like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this person related to this person who was related to this person said this. And then it's like, yeah, it's almost like a freaking like court document transcript.
Yeah, I tried reading the Old Testament just like to see what was in it. It was just way too dry.
Uh-huh.
Like I got through like the part of the Garden of Eden part of Genesis, and it's like, oh, here's 45 pages of genealogy of people who don't do anything. But like one thing you mentioned about how like it focused on Moses' early life more than the original text did. That's not an uncommon thing for film adaptations. Like,
No.
have you ever read Treasure Island?
Yes.
They're on the boat for like 3 fucking pages.
Yeah.
And in
That
every
was smart.
film adaptation I've seen, they're on the boat for like,
The entire second act.
yeah. So there's a precedent for that. It's about making. Also, Treasure Island is boring. So
It is so boring.
the ship provides a great opportunity to characterize all these knuckle fucks who are going to be running around on this stupid island doing nothing interesting. Yeah, have them talk to each other on the boat.
Everyone knows the 2 ways you make Treasure Island better. Space or Muppets. Take your pick.
I was just going to say, both of those feature great songs during the second act boat part.
Are you referring to Cabin Fever?
I'm referring to Cabin Fever, which isn't the best song in that movie.
It's
but
a pretty good song.
It's a pretty good song.
Anyway, back to the Prince.
And
of
I
Egypt.
really like that Goo Goo Dolls song from Treasure Planet. I still really like that song.
Me too. I still love that movie. We'll talk about that movie. I love that movie. I will defend it till my dying breath. But anyway, The Prince of Egypt. Let's some facts before we move on to sort of the meat of stuff. Like we go through like the characters and the actors and whatever. It was the first top-grossing non-Disney animated film. It became the top-grossing non-Disney animated film, and like the first in a long time to make a buttload of money. Until the Simpsons movie came out.
The record was held by it until Simpsons movie in 2007.
Yeah, so it was a very long time.
That's pretty bananas.
Yeah.
Somebody on Tumblr asked why I say that so much, and the best answer I could give is that I played a lot of Donkey Kong Country as a kid. I don't know why, man. It's just something I say.
And it is the only DreamWorks animation, only traditionally animated film to win an Oscar, and one of the 4 DreamWorks animated films to be nominated for more than one Oscar. It won the Oscar for Best Original Song for the song When You Believe, which to me is not the best song in that movie.
Which song was
To
that?
me,
The really cheesy one at the end.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I don't even remember that.
Like, miracles happen when you believe. And then they had the pop song version performed by Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey.
Oh, well, then
in the
that's
credits.
why.
That's why. But to me, I think Deliver Us was the best song.
Yeah.
I think that other than that one, music didn't do it for me.
Really?
No.
I feel
super
like
dug
this
it.
movie was held back. I understand that, there are 2 reasons why I think this was a musical. One, if they're trying to go for the scope, especially of something with such a religious context, music is a pretty big part of pulling that off. And also, they were really, really looking for a slice of that Disney pizza. This isn't,
Well, I think, because that was still during the time when Disney set that precedence of, animated theatrical movies have to have songs. And that's why Pixar made it one of their mission statements, no fucking songs, because everybody was expecting it. So it was sort of an industry standard.
really, really fight them on Toy Story. And all right, well, get Randy Newman in it. Shut up.
Yeah.
And then Cars, there was a bunch of shitty licensed music. They honest to fuck put Life is a Highway in that movie as if anybody has ever wanted to hear that song.
But for me, the music didn't bother me. It was just them breaking out into song that was weird for me. But, the choral aspects, I think, were very appropriate.
Yeah.
Especially because it's Moses. When I think about Moses and choral singing, I think about, Negro spirituals and stuff. So that just seemed to fit for me a lot.
I was... The only song that I had a huge problem with was sadly Steve Martin and Martin Shorts playing with the big boys. Just didn't need to be there. And
that song didn't need to be there.
And
that song didn't do a damn thing.
Sadly,
I like the chanting part with all the gods.
Oh yeah,
and then
that was
after
cool.
that, it needed to stop.
That was that's sort of like the polka rap of the Egyptian pantheon. And I just wish Steve Martin and Martin Short were also joined by Chevy Chase so I could make a Three Amigos reference at some point in this fucking podcast. I guess it's just never gonna happen.
Nope.
So you just stop listening now if you thought
Maybe
that
if
I was
we-
gonna ever talk about the Three Amigos on this show. No.
Maybe if we ever review the Three Caballeros.
You're right, there's still hope.
And then a lot of the singing was actually in Hebrew. And there was some like traditional songs, and the late Israeli singer Ofra Haza did some of those, like, you know, like those long waily notes, those, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
those really pretty ones. And that was really cool. I do think the musical direction was overall really good,
Honestly, when
though I could have done without them just like, I'm gonna sing a song now.
I mean, that's just how that's how the quasi musical animated movies of up to the 90s worked. It's just par for the
But
course.
none of the people like who sang, everybody needed a singing double.
And that's also par for the course.
Yeah.
But I super dug through Heaven's Eyes, just that whole giant like montage of them dancing around in Civ.
That is my favorite joke in the movie.
I like the montage, yeah.
My favorite joke in the movie is like you see the silhouettes of them through the tent when they're talking to the dad about wanting to get married.
Uh-huh.
The physical comedy in that was really great.
Oh yeah, no, he's freaking Danny Glover is Jethro. Just love him, love that guy.
Yeah, like, I think it was like Moses made a motion, and then...
But he was like really timid, and then Zipporah was like a motion which is akin to, we're gonna get married no matter what you say, and then the Jethro just like does this enormous shrug and hugs him.
Yeah.
He's like, okay! Yeah, let's talk about the characters and the actors who play them, and like the interpretation of the characters.
Well, first of all, one kind of problem-y thing is that although there are no white people in the movie, all the actors except for Danny Glover are white. I think. It's overwhelmingly white.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Jeff Goldblum's Jewish.
Which is the kind of white. I mean, it's appropriate enough. Look, I mean...
Patrick Stewart is like righteous white.
Patrick Stewart is a cool white.
But no, that's definitely not okay, but...
I mean, it's a tricky thing with animation, because, strictly speaking, unlike in live action, where where your options are either you cast them in the right frickin' color, you cast a character with an actor of the proper race, or you just ignore it and you do like a whitewashing thing, or like blackface. So, those are all bad, except for the first one that was good.
Yeah, but
With animation, there's more leeway because the face that is still on screen is the proper race. But
you don't have to look like the character to be the character. Like, the voice of Korra is super white.
yeah,
Korra is not. And I don't think that's like a diss on the actress or the character. It's just, that's sort of one of the beauties of voice animation, is that you don't have to look like the character at all to be that character.
Yeah.
You can embody this role that you could never embody based on your physicality.
how that is absolutely true, and I largely agree with that. But the other thing is that it's the same thing with, any kind of whitewashing casting, is that you're taking limited roles away from people of color and giving them to white people who do not have as much of a problem finding roles.
Oh, absolutely.
It's less problematic as, again, to mention it briefly, Exodus, but it would have been cool if there were more actors of color in this movie, but it's not...
Or at least more Jewish actors.
Yeah.
But yeah,
especially
right.
look, he's
Totes
he's
right.
especially right. Given not like with any film he's got a point, but he especially hit the nail on the head with this film is specifically about like it's a Jewish story, and like with specific, it's just so contextually important that they are these races and these people.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that's the whole point of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could have been better, but the actors themselves do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So let's get into that now that I've bummed everybody out.
Okay. Well, Moses is played by Val Kilmer. who also plays the voice of God.
Uncredited.
And I really uncredited
Because I mean,
no, I know why they, but the reason why they did it, I think, is really fascinating and a really good idea. And the reasoning was that for the writers, their theory was that when God talks to you, he comes speaking to you in your own voice. So if God was talking to Zipporah, it would be the voice of Michelle Pfeiffer speaking. So it wasn't saying that like Moses and God are the same, but because God lives through us, he sounds like us, and like the best way to present himself to us without freaking us out is to sound like us, which I thought was kind of a creative thing that they did, instead of just like this angry guy. I mean, he got a little angry.
Yeah.
He was pretty boomy overall.
He got sassy in that bush.
He got a little sassy, but then he got kind of nice.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, I'm gonna caress you with my warm bush. Fine. I'm sorry. That's not No, with my fire.
Like, I had a bit.
Podcast
Gone.
over.
No, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. It was
no,
a really beautiful
continue.
scene.
Continue. We don't have to keep making fun of her.
My point was that he was a lot nicer than the Old Testament God usually is.
Well, at that moment, then he got really mean when the plagues came.
Oh, well, yeah.
He does not.
Those plagues were really mean.
Yeah, but they were.
Well, like half of them.
I mean, so was the
annoying.
slavery. I guess that's if you know.
Okay, let's not talk about God anymore. That was a bad idea. Okay, but I think he was a pretty good Moses. Do you guys think he did okay?
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, I didn't dislike any of the performances in this movie. I felt the closest I came to disliking any performances was that I felt the people who were doing just like straight up their regular American or I guess Canadian accents were just like alongside everybody doing that sort of
Pseudo.
Is there a word for this?
Like pseudo-British?
No.
Pseudo-British thing?
Madonna
No,
voice?
it's like Roman English.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you see any
Shit.
movie set in ancient Rome, everybody's doing, like, a kind of British accent.
No, but here's the thing. If you noticed, all the people doing that were the Egyptians.
And Jeff
And it was
Goldblum.
Well, no, Jeff Goldblum was just doing
No.
Jeff Goldblum's voice. Jeff
Jeff
Goldblum
Goldblum
has
was-
zero range. He can only be
That's
Jeff
what I'm
Goldblum.
saying.
All the Hebrews were doing more of an American accent.
Yeah.
No, what
whereas the
about
Egyptians-
Hoy and Hotep?
Oh, well, that's...
They weren't Hebrews.
But
No,
they,
but they were Egyptian and they were doing American accents. What I'm
They
saying,
don't count.
Yeah.
They didn't even get names in the original story.
they're the gargoyles of this film. From Hunchback.
But yeah, other than that, pretty much all of the Egyptian royalty had like the Queen's English, and all the Hebrews had like American English, and it was done on purpose to sort of
Differentiate,
distinguish them from each other, like how they made the Hebrews rounder and the
I've never
Egyptians more angular.
I've never really minded what production chooses to do with English accents when realistically meta text they're not speaking English at all. Like, it doesn't matter to me because it's like, well, they're not really speaking that language anyway, so they sound like something totally fucking different regardless.
and like you could say, well, they could give them like Egyptian accents or Israeli accents.
But
this
then
was
that's-
this was thousands of years ago. They're nothing the same.
Also,
We
I
know what
don't
those
want.
people
I wouldn't
sounded
want to.
like.
I wouldn't want to tell a bunch of. I wouldn't want to tell a bunch of non-Egyptian and/or Hebrew actors
Also
to
that-
start doing those accents. Yeah, no.
Also, do we even know what the ancient Egyptian language like sounded like?
Probably some nerd probably knows.
Okay.
Some dumbass nerd.
Some dumbass nerd getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars more than any of us will see to research this stuff. Yeah, that idiot knows.
But
Probably the most distinctive
but
thing
we don't know
about-
what like the accents and the enunciation sound like. There's no way
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah, and probably the most distinctive version of this Moses is that he's a lot younger. Like a lot of like the most of Exodus, like the big chunk of it that we get to read the most about, he's like 80. And when he sees God, like the experience is so amazing that he ages mentally and physically.
What, like Link?
No, he gets a beard.
God makes him go through puberty.
No, God gives him a beard because God knows that people only pay attention to you in the Bible if you have a beard. So that's what happened.
It's very true.
Okay, I'll buy that.
But in this story, they didn't age him up because it's Hollywood, and like, you can't have an old fart be the main character for some reason.
Sexy Moses.
Yeah, he had really nice floppy hair, and he was very attractive. All the characters were very attractive. Okay, so let's talk about Ramses II.
In this movie, it's pronounced Ramesses, which I don't know if I've heard outside of this movie, but I assume that's the proper pronunciation if they did all that research.
Yeah, probably. Ramesses II, voiced by Ralph Fiennes.
Who,
I think it's Fiennes.
I don't know who that
Fiennes?
is.
Yeah, who is that?
He plays Lord Voldemort in the Harry Potter series. He was he was the titular Red Dragon killer in the Red Dragon 2002 film.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he was in Schindler's List. He was in.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Scrolling.
So he's a big name actor I've just never heard of because I'm illiterate.
I think it's because he's like a British guy, so. Yeah, he plays Ramses II, which is Moses' adoptive brother, and the eventual successor to his father, Ramses I, or Seti, as he's called in this film. He, and, as we said before, his relationship with Moses is the core of this film. When they start out, Moses is like the rambunctious younger brother that's always getting into trouble, and Ramesses is always, like, taking the fall for his mistakes, and he has all this pressure because he's going to become the next pharaoh, and, like, he can't let the kingdom go to ruin, and, one emperor makes a weak link thing, destroy, whatever. So that's sort of his motivation, is to not to be the weak link in the legacy of Egypt. But he loves his brother. And, like, even when all this crap is happening, even during the plagues, he's still... until the last plague, I think. He still really, really still cared about Moses. And, like, when Moses returned, he was like, oh my god, Moses! Hey, bro,
here's the thing. If he didn't care about Moses, he could have just had him killed.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, because that was the thing. In the Ten Commandments film, Ramesses was just a prick. Like, he was just evil. Like, there was nothing redemptive about him at all. He wasn't even interesting. He was just an evil bastard. This film made him like a person. Which...
He was.
He was. Ramses was a person. He was a king of Egypt. We don't really know how that all fits into the Moses story because, Egyptologists and biblical theologians have sort of argued about the timeline of these things, which we're not going to get into. But yeah, he was a person. and I like that he remained a person till the very end. He was never like this maniacal, cackling, whatever. You felt bad for him. Sometimes you felt really bad for him and didn't feel so happy for the Hebrews when he was in pain. Like, I know, like, in earlier scripts of the movie, they had to change it because they made him too sympathetic. And they're like, we can't make him too sympathetic because then nobody will be happy when the slaves are freed. Which they should be because they're slaves and they're freed, but so many people died.
Yeah, just thinking about Ramesses II, because, like, their father, like, after Moses comes back, he's already long dead, so, like, he's not really a villain. Ramesses, I wouldn't call him, like, this film really does not have a main antagonist except for the horrible, except for slavery, basically, existing.
Yeah, the institution of slavery.
The institution of slavery, that's the word I was looking for. Like, the institution of slavery itself is really just the villain.
And I guess since we're talking about him, Seti, or Ramesses' father, Ramesses I, was played by Patrick Stewart.
Everybody's favorite guy.
He's pretty great.
And despite only having a few scenes, he did leave a pretty good impression. Especially with the part when Moses, realizes that he's a Hebrew and realizes what his father, or adoptive father, did to the Hebrews. And it's just, like, comforting his son, and it's like, sacrifices must be made, and he seems sad about it, but then he says, they were only slaves, son. And it's like, oh, man.
Oh, Dad.
Dad.
Come on.
But it was fascinating because you could tell that that decision was difficult for him, or at least difficult for him to admit, but something he felt was necessary and didn't feel... It was weird because he just thought them as slaves, so he didn't feel bad about killing them, but he did feel bad? Like, I wasn't sure...
I mean, like, he was... honestly, like, well, because, like, basically... To be okay with slavery, you basically have to see them as less than people, and
Yeah.
So they're while killing is you can feel bad about killing, people can feel bad about killing and still kill.
Yeah. But I just love that shot where he's talking about the legacy, and it zooms out, and you see his profile against the profile of the Sphinx.
Well, yeah, those are the best shots in this movie of like the parallel profiles.
Speaking of his face, I just randomly scrolled through Zoopia. There is a photo of his mummified head. He's got a pretty great jawline, even all these thousands of years later.
Oh, really? Can I see?
Yeah, mummified head of SETI 1. I mean, just... That's what I'm calling him. SETI 1.
SETI 1. Oh, wow.
There's Peace 2.
Whoa. Yeah, no.
He's got a better chin than me.
Yeah. Hey, it looks good for a dead guy.
Damn. Whoa!
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
Nikki's just like, I'm gonna fuck that mummy.
Holy crap!
They knew how to preserve a guy.
We don't see much of SETI 1 because he dies. And we also don't get much explanation about the death or Ramesses' feelings about it or anything. It's just he's not there anymore.
It's not important to the story.
And skipping back, we have Zipporah, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, who is Jethro's oldest daughter and Moses' wife in the film. And one of the interesting things that they did with her character is that she sort of replaced Aaron's role in the story. Because in the story, it was Aaron's, Moses' older brother, who was sort of his right-hand man and his confidant, and who was always with him when all the miracles were performed and helping him give his speeches and such. But in this movie, they decided to give that role to his wife, which I think is kind of cool, even if it's inaccurate.
Oh yeah, no, I well, on one hand, I super agree with that choice because it gives the female character more stuff to do. But also, I am crestfallen because you have just informed me that Jeff Goldblum could have had a bigger role in this film, and that will always make me sad. Any missed opportunity for Jeff Goldblum just breaks my heart.
Well, when you read the next time you sit down to read the good book, just imagine his voice in your head.
Just
whenever.
stutter all of his lines.
He should read the Bible. Has he? Has he done audiobooks? I feel like he should. I would read every audiobook he's ever narrated.
Really?
Probably.
So Zipporah is introduced in the film during the first act when Moses is still sort of a pricky prince as a concubine that's offered to Ramesses, actually. And it's pretty uncomfortable scene. I can imagine parents awkwardly having to explain what the heck is going on to their kids.
Another thing that they couldn't get away with in a PG movie if this wasn't biblical.
Yeah, I mean, she was on a rope and bring her to my chambers, and it was obviously that she was desert flower, desert cobra thing.
Yeah, creepy, exotic fetishization.
Yeah. She is of the Midian tribe, a group of people which are heavily featured in scripture. And in this story, in this film, Moses helps her to escape. And then when he later joins up with the Midians in the movie, he ends up marrying her. And she's definitely his biggest supporter and defender. Anytime people make to attack or harm Moses, she's the first one to go to his aid or hang on to him. And I like when she hangs on to him, because she doesn't hang on to him the traditional way of oh, save me. It's more I'ma save you, which I thought was kind of neat.
Because
she was really nice. I liked her a lot.
They never really made, they didn't make that mistake of taking the phrase strong female character literally, meaning she has to beat people up. Hollywood is just a bunch of 80-year-old 5-year-olds.
A bunch of Benjamin Buttons.
Yeah, Hollywood is run by Benjamin Buttons, and they need to be stopped.
But she was physically pretty strong. I mean, she did tie that guy up and climb out the window and, like, pull Moses single-handedly out of that well, so...
Yeah, I guess.
But, you know, she didn't,
She didn't do kung fu.
Tucci's point stands.
Totally. And then we have Sandra Bullock as Miriam, Moses' oldest sister. There's the 3 siblings. She's the oldest. She sort of, like, takes the role of the mom after the mom dies, in a way. Like, she's the one that's like, Moses, you are our brother.
Yeah.
And he's like, the fuck? And, you know, I'm surprised, like, she didn't get in trouble a long time ago, you know, with her behavior and, like, how tough and strict it was to be a slave. But, you know, I guess it's poet and, like, artistic license or whatever.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't, like, stand for anything, and it's always like, we must help him, and this isn't right, and you are the deliverer, and, you know. She has a much bigger role in this film than she ever did in the original story.
Yeah, because, I mean, the thing with the Bible, and this is, like, one of the few things I noticed, that there are so many, like, figures in it who are mentioned so briefly. Like, not to go into details, but, like, Lucifer. Lucifer might be a typo. So, I mean, if you're gonna do any kind of interesting stories with a lot of these characters, you gotta flesh them out, and you gotta do more than the original duders what wrote the Bible did. Or otherwise it's a bunch of characters who just, they're introduced and then nothing happens. Like, side characters in Axe Cop.
Yeah. Moses, on the other hand, was talked about a lot in the different iterations of scripture. And in the Quran, he was mentioned more than any other individual and recounted more than that of any other prophet in the entire book. Like, I think the count was that he was mentioned 502 times.
Dang.
In the Quran. And then, of course, in, you know, the Torah is just, like, everywhere. And Christianity, too, he's, like, second to Jesus, I think. And not even really. He's like, super important.
He's a really big deal.
Yeah, he's the definition of a big deal. And then, you know, of course, Aaron, Jeff Goldblum, who was really demoted. Like, he barely had a role. He even had less of a role than the sister did. He was just sort of there to be the skeptic. I mean, he is played by Jeff Goldblum, so...
yes.
And then Danny Glover, as we mentioned, plays Jethro, Zipporah's father and the Midian's high priest. Danny Glover did not do the song, though. That was Brian Stokes Mitchell.
Yeah.
So, honestly, not that much, because most of what Jethro did was sing.
Yep.
So
he basically came into the booth on his lunch break.
He was like, hey, Danny, you want to sing? Danny Glover doesn't sing.
Too old for this.
There it is.
Helen Mirren was Queen Tuya, which was Moses' adoptive mother, the one who found him in the basket, which I researched is apparently the Islamic version of the story, because different versions had either Ramses the First's sister or daughter find him. It was the only one I mentioned that explicitly said the wife of Seti was the Islamic version. So that was kind of interesting to me. Again, she didn't say very much. She was just ashamed of him for giving Zipporah a hard time when she was, like, presented. And that's about it. And she sang a lot, but again, that wasn't Helen Mirren. That was Linda D. Shane.
Good job, Linda.
I liked her design a lot.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
the character design in this movie was really super solid, especially like you were saying with like making all the Egyptians angular and making the Hebrews more organic looking, like that. Just that conscious effort to like give that whole cohesive design choices in everybody. It's super good.
Yeah. And then we had Steve Martin and Martin Short as Hotep and Huey, respectively. They were the
quote-unquote...
Egyptian priests.
I was going to say they're the quote-unquote comic relief.
Yeah, I guess.
That and, like, the camel. The camel was the only other comic relief.
Because you gotta have the riding animal that is basically a dog, but even smarter.
Yeah.
Which is, to my money, best done by Tangled.
And the mother, the biological mother, Yocheved, was voiced by Ofra Haza, who I mentioned before, that very successful Israeli singer. So that was kind of neat. That it was, because I believe the mother did sing some Hebrew in the beginning before she transitioned to English.
Like we said, this movie's strongest aspect is its depiction of two brothers on opposite ends of an ideological spectrum who still love each other and still really want to love each other, but whose causes tear them apart. That, more than anything, is what this movie really excels at.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Their relationship is built up really well. Sure, a lot of the dynamic in the beginning is kind of played out, but, I mean, it works well as a framework, and then they go places that are actually interesting with it later in the movie.
I still felt their initial sibling relationship was interesting because, like, yeah, like they do a lot of whole tropes, like, you know, the one of the brother always gets the other brother into trouble. But then, you know, even if Moses was, you know, being a little shit all the time, he also, you know, showed legitimate. He didn't want to get Ramesses in trouble as much as he did, and then like they had that scene where he convinced Seti One to give his bro a chance and, like, you know, give him some responsibility, and that was sort of like his big moment. And like yeah, so it was sort of like, yeah, they can be jerks, but they also love each other, which is basically siblings.
Yeah, and their relationship sort of matured, like, as they, you know, grew up and, like, came back to each other in these very different states. Like, that dynamic didn't stay, kind of, but, like, it felt like a continuation of the dynamic in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to say it.
Like two people who have matured 10 years, however long it was, coming back to that dynamic.
And, like, there was a lot of parallels, like, you know, the scene with Ramesses on the statue and Moses on the ground, and I liked a lot of the parallels that were in this film. You could say it was sort of cliched and expected, but I think it helped to sort of mirror the character growth and the wider spectrum of the story.
Yeah, it also just sort of brought home all the parallels. Just brought home how on purpose everything was, how much they paid attention to their own film. And like set up every scene and gave you a reason to be looking at this specific thing in this specific way.
Yeah, I really liked DreamWorks' 2D art style. I wish they would have done more than 4 movies with it, but you know.
I bet they wish those 4 movies made a lot more money.
Yeah,
I love the character design so much.
I mean, that's it. Yeah, because it was this one,
Sinbad,
El Dorado. No. Spirit style, you know, the
Silmarillion.
The Silmarillion. And then I think El Dorado. I don't know the order.
No, hold on. Okay, I'm looking at it now. I didn't realize we were going in order. I was just naming shit. Prince of Egypt, El Dorado, Spirit, and then Sinbad.
Yeah, and all of them underperformed except for, of course, for Prince of Egypt, because, I mean, when you make a religious movie, you have a guaranteed audience.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because like, okay, listen to the budget and the gross. Prince of Egypt, they spent $70 million. They grossed over $200. 2 years later, they made El Dorado. They spent $95 million. They made back $76.
Yeah, but I do feel like that this movie probably is the strongest.
Oh, absolutely.
Of the 4, because, you know, Spirit was just like, it's a horse.
Well,
I mean, it was cool.
Spirit made its money back because, you know, little girls love horses.
Yeah. And then Sinbad, I remember seeing as a kid and being really excited for it and just sort of disappointed.
Yeah. Because it was supposed to be a whole big epic series. Because like, Sinbad... Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't feel that way, though.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, so was El Dorado. I think DreamWorks just really wanted to have, like, they wanted something to franchise, and it just never. Well, I guess they did. They would later to franchise their shit with, like, Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and Madagascar.
Yeah.
Cut it out, DreamWorks. You did it. We get it.
I have two favorite scenes in this film. I think the first one is the hieroglyphics scene.
The dream sequence?
The dream sequence with the animated hieroglyphics, which I just thought was so cool.
Yeah.
It just looked awesome. I loved the music with it. I liked how it was choreographed. Like, it was really awesome. And then the Angel of Death scene, which, was very powerful. And, I liked how there was no music. I liked the depiction of the Angel of Death, too. Like, that was very creative. It's not like an actual angel flying around with a bloody sword. It's this spirit thing that you can't really conceive of.
This jacked up, tweaked out angel like, I'm gonna get you!
And, like, I like the way that they did it and the way that they showed it. It was very, it was powerful, it was effective, and it was, something I hadn't really seen before, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I agree those are probably the two strongest points of the movie. Like, the opening scene was really good, the whole Deliver Us song. There were some
montage.
There were some effects jack-off scenes, like the chase sequence, which looked fine, but like that scene was in there mostly to show off what the animators could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would argue this whole movie is a giant animation wank, and it works.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Katzenberg said. And he's like, I want them to know what they lost.
And you will rue the name Katzenberg.
Brr.
And I liked Moses's, and Moses's is really hard to say, Zipporah's relationship. Even though it was really just shown in that one scene, like with the montage and then like with the end of the montage, it was just really sweet. And I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect a biblical marriage to be so sweet.
It is very much a movie of its time, I feel, but it definitely holds up very well.
I think it delivered us.
Okay, well, I guess I have to end my sentence now because it's not going to get any better than that. Tooch! Alright, do we want to move on to recaps, I guess? Because we're done now. I'm not turning back.
Okay.